Well, now let me formally say welcome to everyone. My name is Ian Scarf, and I am the director of the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival. This is the third digital concert that the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival has put together. And it was kind of at first a response to the pandemic crisis as a way to continue reaching our audiences. This summer, the summer of 2020, is the 10th season of the Trinity Alps Festival. And, we had grand plans to host, all of these musicians in California to do these tours, dozens of concerts all over the Western United States featuring musicians from all over the world. And now all of that is very much up in the air, as you can imagine. Um, but this is one way that we can continue sort of reaching our audiences, and of course building new audiences around the world even. And it's also a way for us to give our musicians some opportunities to perform again, because as you all are surely aware, this crisis is hitting performing artists like us especially hard, as we have no idea when we can return to sort of work as normal. So it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this concert. Today we will be hearing a little bit, I'll be performing a little bit later, but first I'll be introducing you to my friend Leonie in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. And before we even get to Leonie's part of the show, you will meet my friend Jari, who is very far away in the Republic of Georgia. Hi, Jari.
Hi, everybody.
All right, Leonie, I'm going to turn off your screen. Okay, now, Jari, I had a little idea, and I wanted to try this first. I thought it would be fun to give people a little bit of a tour to sort of show where we are. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Okay, everyone, bear with me. I'm going to share my screen, which should look like Google Maps. Is that right? Yeah, we're good,
Yeah.
Jari?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
welcome. This is my neighborhood by Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. It's foggy and blustery cold outside, like a normal summer day. And I thought I would just show us where we are going to be going today. So as I zoom out, you see California and all of my saved places on the map, and you see my friends in Oregon. If we keep going out, you can sort of see Canada, Alaska, the rest of the US. Today, we are going to be visiting across the ocean. Our friend Leonie lives in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. Like I said, we'll get to her later. But I thought if you are like me, and I told you, um, that you would be meeting my friend Jari, who lives in Tbilisi, the Republic of Georgia, you would probably have uh, um, either a rather vague idea of where that is, or you'd maybe have a better idea of where that is than me. But I admit I had to look it up to know exactly where this was. So let's do this. Driving directions from Amsterdam to Tbilisi. Just in case Leonie and Jari wanted to get together for a rehearsal, it would be a 49-hour drive, 3,800 kilometers, going through Central, Eastern Europe, going all the way across Ukraine, taking a ferry across the Black Sea, all the way to the Republic of Georgia. And that's where we would find our friend Jari. Hey! So,
I'd recommend.
Jari,
I
thank you
recommend
again for joining us.
driving through Istanbul rather than through Russian-occupied Ukraine. But that's just personal preference. It's really dealer's choice.
All right. Now, would you give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself and why a cellist from Anchorage, Alaska has come to be in Tbilisi, the Republic of Georgia?
Well, there are many ways of answering that question, but seeing as this is an artistic venture, I'll answer it in the artistic way, which is just a life lived really just chasing fantasies, I studied Russian in high school, and I was always interested in the region. And when I was studying in Canada, when I was studying music in Winnipeg, which is a less exotic location than Tbilisi, I found myself spending hours on Wikipedia looking and Google Maps, just looking at different parts of the world. And I thought, boy, that's about the weirdest place I can think of. I want to go there. Then, if you kind of continue in that direction, some decade later, hey, that's your life now.
So, what was it that ultimately brought you to Tbilisi? Was it a job? I mean, how do you
Uh,
find employment
yes.
these days?
Uh, Well, so I had been living in Istanbul as a street musician, playing on the ferry boats, which carry people across the Bosphorus Strait from Europe to Asia and back, like a public bus. And I was ready for something perhaps a little, well, you know, concert halls with less ambient noise than the motor of a ferry boat, really. And there was a job advertised for the chamber orchestra here in Tbilisi, and of course I had visited before, and I applied and I won the job, and so I've worked here as principal of the chamber orchestra, playing a lot of Baroque music, and then now I play in the Philharmonic.
Wow. Okay. So, or you probably mean that you did play in the Philharmonic before things started shutting down with the pandemic crisis?
That is correct.
So, what have you been doing with yourself since, the whole crisis has sort of shut down your performing career?
Well, uh, just was camping last night out in a village where there's an old Soviet era astronomical observatory, and I spoke with a woman today who lives. This whole village is was actually sanitariums, like rest areas for tuberculosis patients. It's called Abastumani. And so in the Romanov era, kind of Russian dynasty, Russian monarchy, in the 1800s, second half of that, they would send tuberculosis patients there because supposedly some tree pollen at a certain time was said to be good for the lungs. So there's all this beautiful Romanov era wooden houses there. And I was speaking with a woman who just lives there, kind of squatted in these abandoned sanitariums. And I mean, it was a hell of a trip. And I woke up camping this morning, ran around the forest, went there, and then now I'm here with you. So this and that.
Wow. That's a longer and kind of cooler answer than I thought you'd say. Now, I know that this program that you have prepared is about 20 minutes of music, but it's different music from different eras and different composers. So, if you don't mind, would you tell us a little bit about the first piece that you're going to present to us?
Yeah. The first piece is by a friend, Ilkim Tongur. It was a Turkish composer who I met in Winnipeg before I moved to Turkey. And she wrote that for me when I was embarking on my first tour in America. And it was about dawn on the prairie and, without trees and buildings and cars and such. And just now I was thinking, I read this great book, Flights by Olga Tokarczuk, this Polish author. And she has this wonderful passage in there about night, which I wish I could remember, but it's a very beautiful description about how really night just kind of moves across the globe. You know, it doesn't really end, of course. And kind of in honor of the fact that we're all 12 hours apart right now, I thought it'd be very nice to play this piece, Dawn, as well, because you see, most of the world and outer space is cold and black and without energy, right? Without light energy. And so light is really just this kind of fickle diversion that just happens momentarily, really, where people wake up, birds start singing, flowers open, and then once again it's night. And so really, I thought it would be very nice to celebrate dawn in the morning with you guys with this piece now.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And I have to say that I love the idea of starting this concert with a piece about the Canadian wilds, written by a Turkish composer, performed by an Alaskan cellist who is currently in Tbilisi in the Republic of Georgia. So with that, I'm going to sign off for the moment and wish you toi toi toi.
Merci. Thank you. Thank you. I can be assured that all of you are applauding even if I can't hear you. So thank you for that wonderful introduction, Ian. Next, we will be staying in Turkey, but going back in time to the 1950s to a composer named Ahmet Adnan Saygun. And he was the first Turkish composer to gain prominence within Western classical music tradition. And he was a colleague of Bela Bartok, who is a very well-known Hungarian composer who would incorporate folk songs into their compositions, but rather in a different way than classical musicians used to. You know, it used to be a lot more, well, less accurate. You know, it'd be, you know, like these these Hungarian dances, right? You know, a lot of these are kind of like a fantasy of what that would sound like, or like the Rondo alla Turca by Mozart, you know. So they started to employ both rhythms and melodies and scales a little more honestly into classical music. And this piece is the Allegretto from his Partita for solo cello. A partita is an older dance form for classical music. Bach wrote many partitas for violin. And so it kind of has this feeling of an old dance, and with this very universal and kind of more ancient tonality of pentatonic scales and modality. It really lends an ancient feel to this piece, which was written in 1953. So this is Adnan Saygun's Partita for the Allegretto from that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jari. Sorry, I will unmute our audience after this performance so that they can all applaud you. And that way you'll get a little bit of a boost after this fine performance.
That's good.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I missed the ball on that one, but I won't do it this time.
Yeah, that's innovative. By the way, people, this is my second online concert. No one is doing that. So you're on the forefront of technology and culture. Okay.
Bravo. Oh, wait, here we go. Yeah.
The host?
That's the host, yeah.
We're going to unmute myself.
There we go.
Next, we're going to take it back. As classical music really is the basis for all of these things. So I'd like to play a piece by Carl Friedrich Abel, which was written in the second half of the 1700s. Actually, not for cello. It was written for an instrument called viola da gamba, which means viola played on the leg, like a cello. And this was an earlier instrument that coexisted at the time of the cello. But much like our early hominid ancestors of Neanderthals and hominids, you know, they sort of died out and the cello prevailed, as did Homo sapiens. So the gamba was a bit of a mixture. It was a bit of a hybrid between a guitar and a cello, in that it had more strings, 6 strings. It had frets like a guitar, and the strings were tuned a little more like a guitar, a bit closer together, so you could easily form chords in your hand. And so for Baroque music, you would have these instruments like the cello and the gamba accompanying. And if you played an instrument with more strings, you could really fill out the harmony and such, and it was really quite useful for that sort of music. I think actually maybe due to towards tendencies towards more melodic music, cello took over because maybe it had that power, but I don't know. So I arranged this piece for cello because I loved it so much, and it's fun because I haven't heard any other cellists play it. So it's like a little game for myself to figure out all these little technical challenges for how to make it more comfortable for myself on this instrument. Abel was a bit of a character. He died at an early age of cirrhosis due to alcoholism. As the stories go, he had, you know, would be carried out to the stage with the curtain drawn as such, as students would carry him out, put him there, curtain would open, he would play, improvise, women would swoon and weep and gasp at his playing. Then the curtain would close and he'd kind of stumble off because he was so drunk he couldn't actually really walk on stage without risking his instrument. Abel actually played in Johann Sebastian Bach's orchestra in Germany and later played with his son. So he has a bit of lineage from Bach and the Bach suites, I would like to think. I'd like to think that he played them. So, you know, we have that kind of, it's a lot to have in common with a historical figure. So anyways, this is his piece in D minor for viola da gamba.
Bravo. Take a bow. Wow, fantastic. Wow, Jari, thank you so much for sharing those with us. It still seems, even though we've been testing this out for a week, and even though we've been doing sound checks, it still seems like just such a miracle that we can actually be doing music, live together. So thank you so much for being a part of this.
My pleasure, and thanks for it's as performers and musicians, performing is part of our identity and who we are, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to really reconnect with that.
Well, it's my pleasure. And by the way, I have to say, I like what you did with your living room with the red curtain and the ferns. Bravo.
It's always like this.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you again to Jari. And I think if Jari hangs on, are you going to hang on till the end of this? I know it's late there.
Yeah.
If Jari hangs on, we'll have time at the end of the program for some Q&A. So, but keep in mind that it's almost 11 p.m. in Tbilisi. So, if we catch you later enjoying a beer, that's fine. We understand. But now it is my absolute pleasure to invite to the stage my colleague and friend, Leonie Bot. Leonie, if you get your video started, and I will unmute you as well. Leonie and I first met in San Francisco when we were both in graduate school at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. That was back in 2006 or something? Goodness.
I was there 2007 till 2009.
Okay, great. We go way back, and we've collaborated a couple of times since then. Once during a couple of chamber music parties in Amsterdam, and Leonie was also a guest at the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival 3 or 4 years ago. So she came up to the beautiful Trinity Alps. Leonie, I would like you to just tell us a little bit about what you've been doing since your time in California back in 2009. What has the last decade been like for Leonie in Amsterdam?
In 30 seconds. Well, I came back to the Netherlands in Amsterdam, and I still had my house here, and it was a bit easier for me to get into nice orchestras and to organize my life as a professional musician more than in San Francisco, which I loved living there actually. But back in Amsterdam, I've been freelancing for a couple of years. I've played very briefly at an opera orchestra in Belgium. And now, for the last 7 years, I've been playing at the Concertgebouw Orchestra in Amsterdam. And yeah, that uh, I really love playing there. It's kind of a dream job for me, and I've studied the first part of my studies in Amsterdam, and this orchestra was always like the big orchestra example.
Yeah,
So it's been
absolutely.
awesome to be part of that,
I
actually.
think the Concertgebouw is one of the great examples of fine orchestras in the whole world. I think it must be just an amazing experience to play with such a good group. Um, but I know that the Concertgebouw, like virtually all the other orchestras around the world, has basically been shut down for public performances the last couple of months. Can you tell us about that, and what you've been doing, and what the orchestra might be starting up again soon?
Yeah. Well, so yeah, like everyone else, we were abruptly stopped. So one night we were playing Tchaikovsky's Pathétique Symphony, and then the next morning we heard, okay, we have to stay at home. So that was very sudden, and well, actually, the since the number of corona cases have been going down so much lately in the Netherlands, things have been starting up little by little, and actually our orchestra has started rehearsing again this past week.
Wow.
So we're all sitting a little under 2 meters apart from each other. Um, the entire hall has been cleared of chairs so that we could have that space to sit. And we have been trying if it's actually possible to play like that. And of course, it's weird and not as nice as sitting like intimately together. But it has felt so good to be playing together and to listen to each other and to look at each other again. And yeah, it has,
Wow.
yeah, it
Well,
feels good.
I am certainly envious. Um, not that my living room isn't wonderful. My cat is here, but it's not like being on stage with Concertgebouw. So, in the last couple months, you told me earlier that you've been practicing more solo music. Which is something that I think most of us musicians did more when we were younger and perhaps going through training in school. And then once we have, ensemble type jobs, we don't do as much solo work. So can you tell us what you're going to play for us today, and who the composer is, and a little bit about that?
Yeah. So yeah, I had to find a way to occupy myself and to challenge myself. And I was already practicing this piece by Eugene Ysaÿe um, before Ian asked me to do this. So I was just alone in my shed, kind of, bowing away. And I thought, oh my, then I can actually have a goal with this, so that would be good. So the piece is by Eugene Ysaÿe. He's a Belgian composer, but mostly a super duper virtuosic violinist. Um, and he composed this in 1923 as a part of a bunch of sonatas, 6 sonatas, each dedicated to a different, yeah, great violinist of his time. And this one he dedicated to Jacques Thibault, a special friend of his.
So when we were doing a sound check, I noticed when I was listening to this that one of the things that Ysaÿe does with his sonata is he frequently recalls the music of Bach. So when I listen to you play, I would say, "Oh, that's Bach," and then it changes. "Oh, that's not Bach." Can you talk about what exactly is happening? Like, why is Bach making such an appearance in this sonata by Ysaÿe from 1923?
Yeah, well, the first movement is actually called Obsession, and one could argue that Ysaÿe was just obsessed with Bach, and that he is yeah, he's incorporating a lot of his style into his writing, but also he's commenting on it. So the piece starts with a super sunny quote of his last partita for solo violin. I can play a bit. Um, and yeah, some people might recognize that, um, but then it gets totally distorted, and it's going to be a very intense, kind of a grim experience. I kind of have to warn you to hang on for that.
So that's so interesting that something that starts with one of Bach's most sunny and cheerful pieces can take us on such a turbulent emotional ride. But I also noticed that Ysaÿe was quoting another piece of very old music, something called the Dies Irae. Can you
Mm-hmm.
play that Dies Irae theme so that we know what it sounds like, and maybe tell us why it's important to this music and to the history of music?
Yeah, I'll first play it. Mm. And this is a Roman Catholic plain chant. Um, so it's very old, um, and it has a Latin text, and it's actually describing the day of doom, Judgment Day. And it has been quoted by many composers after that to refer to, yeah, something looming. I mean, different composers have meant different things with it. And I don't want to pour everyone into desperate mode by playing this, but it is going to be like quite a ride, I think.
That's okay. I think that's why most of us do music, is for the ride. So you said that this piece has, I think, four movements, right? So how long is it overall?
I think it's about 15 minutes. I haven't really looked it up, but something
That's
like that.
okay. None of us will be thinking about time as we are transported by this. So thank you so much for that introduction, and I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy this. Toi toi.
I just wanted to tell you that so this piece has four movements. The first one's called Obsession, um, and that has the most clear Bach quotes in it. Then comes Malinconia, which is Italian for melancholy. Then the third movement will be the Danse des ombres, which is the dance of the shadows. And then we will have Les Furies, the Furies, which are actually female deities of vengeance from ancient Greek mythology. So there's a whole bunch of lurking, dooming deities out there. Um, yeah, for our imagination to interpret. Enjoy.
Brava! Brava!
Wow.
Set it off.
Wow.
I'm gonna shut her off, and I'll tell her that it's too discordant for her.
Wow. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you, Leonie, for that incredible. You weren't kidding. That really went all over the place, especially after such sort of innocent beginnings with that little quotation from Bach.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I know.
Well, thank you for being a part of this today. Nice to see your little practice studio there in Amsterdam, and nice to hear some music. Thanks again.
Well, you're very welcome. It was great to do this.
All right. Well, the last part of today's program is going to feature some music by Chopin, which I'll take over myself on my trusty Steinway here. Before we get there, I wanted to remind everyone that this concert, like all of our programming through this music festival, is treated as an open event. We really want to make it welcome to audiences all over now. And so with that in mind, instead of setting a one specific ticket price, we have deliberately left that open to our audiences. So what I would encourage you to do is think about what this is worth to you, what you might spend on a ticket nowadays, wherever you may live in the world. Think about what your economic situation is like, because I know it's changing so rapidly for so many of us on the planet. And if you have if you can take a moment to make a contribution, it will support these musicians today, musicians that will feature later on in the summer, and we're also in the process of starting a grant program to help musicians sort of adapt to this new world. So many of us are now teaching lessons online. We're doing more recordings and performances. We are finding ways to do live streamed concerts like this, and I think it's an important thing to make sure that musicians who are maybe not financially able to adapt as quickly have a little bit of support. So that's what this upcoming grant fund is for. Today's program is being recorded. I'm going to do some editing and clean it up a bit and then put it up on YouTube. So if you know anyone who missed this program and might still want to hear it, keep an eye out for that. I will also send a follow-up email to everyone on this list with listing the entire program. So all the pieces that you heard today, if you want to reference them later or look them up, you'll have that in the email. Also, I would like you all to fill out a quick survey about this experience. This is the third time we've done this, and I've played like thousands of concerts in my life. And so I feel pretty comfortable doing a concert, but doing a concert online is still such a new experience that I'm, like everyone, I'm learning so much as we go. So your feedback would really be important to help us keep building this series throughout the summer. Okay, now the last piece on the program is one of my absolute favorite pieces of piano music. I know you probably hear me say that all the time, but this one, it's been a piece that I've loved for a long time, and now in this sort of shelter-in-place situation, I've had a lot more time with my piano, and I've decided, you know what, I'm going for it. I've loved it for so long, I want to play it for you. This piece is by Frédéric Chopin, and it is called a barcarolle. A barcarolle, the title is actually, it suggests a piece of Italian folk music. A barcarolle is traditionally something you would hear in Venice, and specifically sung by gondoliers who pull the boats down the Venetian canals. So a barcarolle, it has several characteristics of this sort of Italian lyrical folk song style. It also almost always has a kind of a simple accompaniment that is meant to convey the feeling of those rocking boats. So, in the case of one of Mendelssohn's barcarolles, you hear... And that always, that kind of rolling feeling is with the music. In the case of Chopin, he gives a very similar accompaniment. And on top of that, you have this kind of very typical Italian-sounding operatic folk song. It's a wonderful, it comes with a lot of imagery. The canals of Venice. The spirit of someone just singing as they move through the canals. But in Chopin's hands, this this idea of a simple folk song, a simple barcarolle, it becomes a much bigger and more intense experience, because Chopin really takes that as a starting point, and he builds this entire sort of tableau out of it. So yes, when we begin, we have that rolling accompaniment, we have that simple kind of melody, which is sung, usually it's sung in two voices, so you'll notice my hand will be contorting around, trying to always get two voices going at the same time. There comes a moment about 3 or 4 minutes in when you think, ah, what a nice song, it's wrapping up. But it does not wrap up. Instead, Chopin pivots and he turns it into a different barcarolle. And there is another kind of accompaniment. And again, it has this kind of rolling sort of waves feeling to it. And then a new folk song emerges, and we think, oh, Chopin is just adding a second sort of barcarolle onto this piece. But that becomes a very long kind of transition that builds and builds, and it starts to become this very sort of unexpectedly passionate situation, where it was started as a very simple folk song type of thing. When that happens, the intensity, it finds its way and it channels, and there comes an amazing moment near the end where things start to slow and they come almost to a complete halt, as though the rippling waters have calmed completely. And in that moment, Chopin writes some very specifically operatic music. When the rhythm stops, there is a single voice that floats up above, and he writes in Italian, dolce sfogato, which is something I've never seen in music before. I had to take it to several of my singer friends who are opera singers. And it has to do with a sweet kind of release in the voice. And, oh, hi, welcome. Welcome back, I should say. And this moment, when Chopin brings the operatic voice in, it really kind of brings everything back to the folk song, and there is a kind of a triumphant and ecstatic ending to it. So, like I said, it has rather innocent beginnings in this folk song, but in Chopin's hands, it turns into this kind of ecstatic and impressionistic experience. I very much hope you enjoy this. This is Chopin's Barcarolle. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Oh, all right. Well, that was my workout for the morning. Thank you so much. We come to the end of today's program, so now I would like to invite everyone to rejoin the party. Everyone can come back to the stage. You can start your video again if you like. You can find that button on the lower left and start your video, I believe. And I'll welcome everyone back to the stage. And you know, this is, I think, a good time, as long as we have my fellow musicians with me here, a good time to have some Q&A time. Let's see, is Jari still with us? Jari.
I live.
You live, you're present.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ian. That was beautiful.
Hey, my pleasure. Like I said, I've been so enjoying that piece. I've been fixed on it for quite a while. And I don't expect to stop practicing it every day. I just love it so much. I have lots of things to refine about that, that's for sure. Let's see. Does anyone have questions for me, Jari, Leonie, about some of the music you heard, or about our illustrious careers from our living rooms these days? I think you should have control of your own mute button, so I encourage you to just pipe right up. Or if you prefer, you can type something into the chat.
Well, I loved these impressionistic colors. I had no idea Chopin was really that impressionistic in the way he approached these, I don't know, textures to it.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly doesn't have that reputation, and I would say most of his music, you know, isn't terribly coloristic and visual. You know, maybe we're just reading into it too much because I told such a vivid story of the Venetian canals, you know.
No, I think it's all in the execution, Ian. You know, in the hands of a lesser pianist, it would be mere show-offy scales, you know, and runs.
Oh, that's
really
very kind.
So why is it that we have not heard the Baccarol, or I haven't heard the Baccarol in concert or in recordings? It doesn't seem to be very popular.
Oh, well, I envy you, because now you can listen to it and with fresh ears, you know. It's a new experience, right?
Right.
You know, Chopin has so many, you know, works, and I think a lot of them fall into neat categories. You know, Chopin has his very passionate ballades. He has his famously challenging etudes for piano. There are the nocturnes, which are very dreamy pieces of night music. And the Barcarolle doesn't really fit into any of those categories. So I think it may just be overlooked in some ways because of that. But, you know, as, you know, a pianist who has spent a lot of time with Chopin, I've been aware of his music. You know, I'm particularly drawn to a recording from, I think, 1950 by a Romanian pianist named Dinu Lipati. And if anyone really wants to hear, I mean, you know, I play it pretty well. I'm not whatever. But if you really want to hear an incredible thing, I encourage you to find the live recording of Dinu Lipati playing that piece. That's been the reason why that music has been stuck in my head for so many years.
Cool.
Let's see.
I'm not sure I got your name right. Leonie, is that right?
Leonie.
Leonie. Well, how did you get drawn to the piece that you played?
Yeah, well, Ysaÿe is kind of a staple composer for violin solo repertoire, I think. And it's not just a virtuosic finger being a clown in a circus, it's also the musical depth of it is so big, and I just love that it goes all over the place, and it has so many colors and so many wild contrasts that I think for solo playing, this is one of the coolest things you can do, basically. And the other sonatas are also really, yeah, very poetic and very interesting and very different from each other also.
Wow.
You
I
know,
would say,
Okay,
you know,
I
it's in partial response to Michael, you know, there are some pieces that are famous because they're famously difficult. And I think to some people, Ysaÿe's music fits in that category. But so it's nice to hear that Leonie's response was mostly about the music, I think.
Well, I think listening from a 21st century perspective, listening to that piece, like, so if you imagine those composers' intentions sort of with the technology that we have today, like imagine really what they would have created, you know, and because you have these different layerings of course, all these different quotes and references to the classical music world. But what I find amazing is that just with 20th century skills of having only the violin, it's really able to create such a sonic space that's very expensive, you know, without kind of these, I don't know, digital editions that I would expect to hear in a piece of that character nowadays, you know.
Yeah. So it's really inviting to go to all these different corners of that world. So that's what I really like.
Wow. Well, this concert was kind of like an invitation to different corners of the world, not just from us, but from our audiences too. Does anybody else want to chime in with a thought or a question or something for one of us? I think you should be in control of your own mute buttons, so go for it. Be daring.
What's up next
Oh, good question.
on the next concert?
The next concert, you know, for the month of June, we have had so many musicians who are interested in these that we are going to transition to doing one concert every week in June.
Bravo!
Hey, and on our next program, it'll be another early start time. I don't remember, James, you're on this program, right? I don't remember if we confirmed Sunday or Saturday. But I'll announce that by the end of today. It'll go out in the publicity. But it'll be another early
Sunday sounded
start
likely,
time.
I think.
Sorry, go ahead, James.
Oh, Sunday sounded likely, I think.
I think Sunday because that meant that we could feature a violin duo from Lucerne, Switzerland. One of our colleagues named Maria Korndorfer can join us with her duo partner. They are going to do violin duos all the way from the lakes of Lucerne in Switzerland. And then also joining us will be our cellist friend, James Jaffe, who's here today. Hi, James.
Hi, guys.
What can we expect from you? I think it sounded like they would do more classical stuff, so we might hear some Benjamin Britten from James next week.
Okay.
There's a beautiful Benjamin Britten suite with almost the Russian equivalent of the Dies Irae, which is the Kontakion, a hymn for the departed, and features prominently in that. And yeah, maybe a little Bach too. Maybe we'll mix it up.
The week after that, I think June 14th, we will be featuring violinist Emma Steele, who lives in Copenhagen.
Oh,
Yeah, Emma was at the festival last summer, so audiences in Northern California will probably remember Emma. And then we will also be featuring a wonderful percussionist who lives near Bergen in Norway. He's going to be doing a percussion program, which should be very interesting, including music by Frederick Rzewski. That should be fun. And then also on that program will be a operatic tenor. My old friend Sam Levine, who now lives in Frankfurt, Germany. He's going to be doing a set of art songs with a pianist from his home studio. Later in June, we'll feature my friend Amy Zanroso. Is Amy still here? I saw Amy earlier. Amy's waving at us from her home in Oakland. She'll join us for some Chopin later this month. My friend Alyssa will be playing some duos with a mandolin player. And gosh, there's more. It's exciting to me to be able to do this because it's not just like yeah, I get to play concerts for people again, but it's like I get to hear my friends playing music again. And in a way, you know, even though we're not making music together at the same time, we are here creating these programs together. So I'm looking forward to everything that's coming up. And like I said, there will be a survey. So if you want to fill out some directions. You know, every time we do this, we're learning something new. And, you know, the truth is that doing this on an online forum, you know, always involves some compromises. You know, we're never able to quite get exactly the balance we want, and the technology never quite works out exactly the way we want. And of course, you know, it's not the same as seeing people face to face, flesh and blood. So, but the fact that we're at least trying and building this community this way is still inspiring to me. So thank you, everyone, for being a part of it.
Yeah, thank you, Ian, for hosting it.
Thank
And
you.
I think we can really embrace the digital aspect of this is if we get some kind of like Snapchat filters for these. I think that could really, you know, keep the focus.
Yeah.
Concerts.
Do you want me to put on some like a leprechaun's hat, digitally speaking, or something?
Yeah, dealer's choice.
Oh, well, it's so good to have your laugh.
Thank you for that laugh. Whoever that was a great one.
Ian, can you hear me?
Is that Anastasia?
Yeah. Can you? I just want to thank you so much. I'm sorry I'm all blacked out. Speaking of technology, I have no idea what's going on here. But I just want to thank you for making it very personal and not.
He has a fixed computer. It's a different issue.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you.
And Jari, thank you so much for the story of Tbilisi. I sing Georgian songs, and and maybe one day you'll feature a vocalist.
Oh, I would love to.
Wouldn't that be fun?
I tried to arrange some of these Georgian songs. Georgia has one of the oldest sort of unique traditions of folk polyphony, which is different voices moving at different times, like a Bach chorale, you know, like choral music. And so they have this in their folk traditions with a lot of different kind of techniques like yodeling, and they have Eastern stuff with like a drone and melody on top of that. And so they have a very rich musical tradition here. And I tried to arrange some of it for cello ensemble, and it just wasn't as good as singing, unfortunately.
Maybe that would be something I'll prompt Ian in an email, because I have some connections with a vocal group that maybe you can get connected with there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Ian, you are the best medicine that can be. Just keep doing this. This is so beautiful. So
thank you.
So powerful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is nice to hear. I think that let's see if anyone else has questions. Otherwise, we can go into wrap up mode. Yeah, keep it going. Keep it going. Well, I'm looking forward to you know, getting back to just practicing the piano. It's kind of amazing how, you know, this little disruption has just changed everyone's life in some way. And it makes me wonder, like, even if we could just be like, yay, miracle cure, things are back to normal. Like, how much would things actually go back to normal? And what would we keep from this time that we've all been sort of resetting our lives, you know? And so, I don't know, this opportunity to reach audiences across the world, I think that's something that I want to keep, you know, forever. You know, I look forward to going back to live in-person concerts as soon as possible, because that's, you know, that's what sort of drove me to do music in the first place. But here is an unexpected benefit of this whole situation. Let's see. Okay, in conclusion, thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for, I saw so many people have already donated a little bit to support this ongoing festival and to support our musicians. You'll all get a follow-up again, survey, program, information about upcoming shows. I hope you get a chance to tune in again. And thank you for everything you've done and all the patience you've shown as we sort of try to build this new system from scratch. So in conclusion, let's unmute all and let's all applaud each other. Yay.
Tbilisi.
Hello, everyone. All right, please enjoy the rest of your Sunday, except for Jari. I know it's already Monday. There.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.